Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiridhitam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Ye Bhurida Janaha. We come to the conversation which took place after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna in Baranagar monastery. All of you know that most of the young disciples who had gathered around Sri Ramakrishna in Kashipur, and the training which they got during the last 6 months, when only the sincere disciples of Sri Ramakrishna stuck to him. Most of the other people who had expectations of some worldly gain, they stopped coming. There were two reasons, as M explains. M was one of the householder devotees who had got the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna, and who was, for whom Sri Ramakrishna's advice was, you stay in your home. Though he wanted to renounce his uh, home because of so many issues that were going on, ongoing issues, which practically drove him to commit suicide. But somehow he was saved at the last minute. Things were really unbearable because for a person of M's caliber, was well versed in philosophy, who had everything in life one could aspire for, a good job, a safe job, plus a lot of Western education, Indian education, education of Sanskrit and the Shastras, both of the West and the East. He was well versed in philosophy, and more importantly, from the worldly point of view, he had a very, very good job. And he was the principal of Morton College, which he was heading. He was the headmaster. So, being so affluent, and yet at the same time he had so many issues, especially his wife. And as Sri Ramakrishna mentioned to him one day, कि Balaram is lucky. He is one of the few in whose house everybody seems to be of the same mind. He says how rare it is, a household where every person, whether it is the husband, wife, son, daughter, everybody is of the same mind, equally devoted, equally religious, equally spiritual, and all of them, there was hardly any conflict of interest. I mean, conflict within their house as to the spiritual goal is concerned. So, Sri Ramakrishna very rarely took food from other devotees' house. Only one or two houses in Kolkata where he used to visit, he used to uh, ask them not only to he would accept food there, but also ask Balram to feed everybody who had come for the meeting, because Sri Ramakrishna found it very difficult to visit Kolkata often, and somebody had to pay the carriage hire, and they used to take him. So he wanted all the people who could not afford to come to Dakshineshwar to see him, or even to Kashipur. Of course, Kashipur days he did not move out, he was not able to move out. So only the genuine people were allowed, and they could come and meet him towards the end of his life. But before that, Sri Ramakrishna was always so empathetic. So he had so much love for the suffering that these worldly people, some of whom were really keen to understand the mystery of this world, the Maya which Holy Mother has created, or Maya which the Divine Mother has created. And they were not able to understand. On one side, you see Master Mashe with a very safe and good job, and on the other side, persistently a nagging wife, uh, who was giving him so much trouble that Sri Ramakrishna once had to tell. He knew Master Mashe was secretly suffering. And then that led to other issues. Some compound issues were there in his house. His brother used to stay. Perhaps it was a very big joint family. It's a very big house, M's house. It has become part of the Ramakrishna mission now. The grandson Deepak Gupta has handed over. He still lives there. He's a bachelor. He is not married, but he has bequeathed that house, and it has been converted into a monastery. So if you see the house even now, it is undergoing repair, but still it was a huge house. So you can imagine the conflicts and the problems that were created because of the misunderstanding, because each one had his own view, the brothers and those who were living there, their children, and M himself was very much troubled by the treatment. I mean, his wife had certain problems, which created a lot of confusion in the house, and everybody wanted, so they wanted to leave the house. They left the house for some time, but then Sri Ramakrishna's wonderful love made him go back. In fact, he was disgusted, and he knew the only solution is to commit suicide, because he was not able to solve his problem in spite of his best efforts. So this M, Master Mahashaya, requested Sri Ramakrishna. He was so disgusted that he just wanted to renounce. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Why should you renounce in the world?" And he gives his famous explanation. It's okay if the boat is in the world, but the water of the world, a boat is in the water, just like a person is in the world, but the water of the world should not submerge him. Just see that it does not, this divine Maya does not submerge you. All you have to do is, there's no problem in being in the world, but don't let the world submerge you and overwhelm you. That is the only condition. He said you have to be careful. And M followed his advice, and as a result of following Thakur's advice, the four pieces of advice which Sri Ramakrishna used to give to householders, because he was the one who first asked this question: what is the way for us? Are we helpless? Because we are involved in so many problems. So Sri Ramakrishna said, no, why should you be helpless? There is a solution to every problem, including to people who stay in the world. Staying in the world does not mean that you have to be off the world. You can learn to live in a very detached way and legitimately enjoy the uh, wonderful things that Prakriti has created. But at the same time, don't get enjoyed by them. Don't let Prakriti enjoy you. That is what we discussed yesterday also. That Swamiji says in his Gyan Yoga lecture, which he delivered in Piccadilly, we find to our disgust that we came to enjoy the world, and we think the world was there for us to enjoy. We started enjoying, but finally we found that it is the world which started enjoying us and depleting us, as casting us aside. So this is a very sad story of almost everybody who has the boat in the world and allowed the water of the boat to come inside the boat. So naturally, the only way is we drown. So Sri Krishna says the boat can float on the water. There is no problem as long as it floats. The water, the right place for the water to be, or sansara to be, is below the boat, not on the top of it. On the top of it, you tend to get submerged, or tend to get you have a tendency to sink. The more the water comes, the weight of the water will increase, and beyond a certain limit, a little water coming in the boat is okay. But if more water comes, that's why when we live in the world, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, now and then you have to remove that water. What do you mean by removing the water? When the boat water comes, so it is like vairagya, or the distinction between that which is permanent and that which is temporary. The temporary things will always give you temporary joy, so one has to be careful. No doubt we can have our trivial joys satisfied, but let us not depend on them for our. It is just like enjoying a sunset, or enjoying a sunrise. You don't expect the sunset or the sunrise to be permanent, and you rush also. You may rush to see that wonderful sunset, knowing fully well that it is transient. That is not attachment. That is not, it is a Maya that makes you see the sunset or the sunrise, and very soon it will vanish. So you are aware. So you know the beauty of the sunset or the sunrise, which you have traveled a long distance to see. There are some points, especially in the hill stations, which is known as sunset point, sunrise point. You see people rushing. They know that if they miss it, even by a few minutes, the sun will set. And then, but that disappointment is not there because they know this is our target. We have to reach there at 5 o'clock if we want to have a glimpse. But they are not sad because the sun has set. They know it is a fact of life that when the sun sets, it will look beautiful for, say, 10 to 15 minutes when the sun is actually setting, and once it is set, it's all dark. So, knowing fully well, one is not attached. One knows that I am going to enjoy the sunset, and once it goes, so that is what discrimination does. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. You know that the thing is anitya, and you go there and see the temporary joy of Prakriti, the great wonderful sights which Prakriti shows us. But Prakriti gives us another lesson. Prakriti or the Divine Mother or the Maya or whatever you say, the Divine Maya. So Arjuna says, when Arjuna asks Sri Krishna says, my Divine Maya is difficult to decipher, but through my grace you can understand it. So it requires the grace of God, as in the case of M. M was told by Sri Ramakrishna that let Maya be there, let this Divine Mother have her play. You enjoy it. But how to enjoy it? By floating on it, not by getting immersed on it. Just like the boat floats on water, it is in touch with Maya, but it, one has to be careful not to be caught. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is uh, telling M during his first conversation. And then he says there are ways and means where the boat can be in water, but the water will not enter the boat. So for that, a few precautions are necessary. What are those? There are four precautions. First, he starts with Nama Japa and Sankirtan. He says remembrance of the Lord's name, the very power of the Lord's name, the repetition of japa. We think it's a very insignificant thing. But those who know, those who have understood the significance of the repetition of the Lord's name, they know how they are responsible for removing our samskaras, bringing peace, bliss, and joy to our minds. Even in these temporary things, even in the temporary, even if it is Maya or it is a temporary experience, we don't get upset because we know this is the law of nature. The sun has to set. Tomorrow again, I might get a chance to see the sunrise. So, knowing the temporary nature, enjoying Prakriti is Vidya Maya. And Avidya Maya is that which makes you think. Avidya Maya, according to this example, is like thinking that the sunset will be eternal for me or the sunrise will be eternally there for me. So I am very much uh, convinced by through the force of Avidya Maya that whenever I go, I shall see the sunrise or the sunset. Also, I'll drive according to my speed. And finally, you go and see that nature doesn't wait for us. The very fact, the hard fact of Prakriti, the transient nature of sunrise or the sunset will not change for the person. It won't wait 10 minutes longer because you have not reached. But trying to feel, trying to think that the sunset, that which is temporary, is a permanent thing and it will wait for us, that is known as avidya maya. So, vidya maya is knowing that it is temporary. So, the distinction between that which is eternal, that Brahman or that consciousness which is eternal and that which is temporary is the very goal of life. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, you can live in the world if you have this kind of discrimination, this kind of vivek. The second thing he said, repeating the Lord's name and practicing spirituality, doing spiritual practices as much as possible, and then having satsanga, because that's the only way where holy company serves the purpose of reminding you of what is temporary, what is permanent. This, though we have read it, we have heard it, it it's like the man takes the color of the company he keeps. So are if you a child is always in the company of people who tell him certain things, he has a tendency to develop those habits. But if you want the child to grow up to be a good person, a noble person, then you have to ensure that his peers, that his friends, his company that he keeps. So we are so cautious about allowing our children to be in the right company, so that we know that their habits are not bad habits are not formed, which ultimately may lead to so many calamities in life. So we know there are certain things, if you allow them to be in the company of people who drink or habitually take drugs and all. So parents are so cautious that their child should be in the or in noble company, where they will pick up these good habits. So also in religious spiritual life, we have to ensure that we ourselves, because we are like children, we are in the kindergarten of spirituality, we should not be so uh, confident of ourselves that we can practice spirituality whenever we can. We have to be a bit careful and uh, keep holy company, so that our we are fenced around. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you need a fence, otherwise the goats and other animals will eat away the sapling. So the sapling, when it grows, needs some kind of holy company or solitude. So solitude is also the first step before aspiring for holy company, because every time you may not get holy company, but at least if you are now and then, if you retire into solitude, give some time to yourself. It is known as enlightened selfishness. People think that people who live to themselves are selfish people. No, they are enlightened selfish. Enlightened selfishness is a term which can be best explained by this example. There was a farmer who used the best and the most costliest seeds when he cultivated, and naturally he had a bumper crop. But he had a very peculiar habit. He distributed those same seeds at a tremendous cost. They were very costly seeds to his neighbors, who had a tendency to plant cheap seeds. So he said, why do you plant these useless, I mean, these cheap seeds, when these wonderful seeds, I have a lot of stock with me, I will give you these seeds. You please plant that. And every year he used to donate these seeds to his neighboring farms, the farmers who were maybe a few neighbors on this side surrounding him. So one day, one of his friends came and asked him, why do you distribute? You can save money. Why do you want to distribute these things? Why are you so unselfish? He explained to his friend, you see, my friend, this is known as enlightened selfishness. I am not selfish, unselfish. I am selfish. The reason why I do these things is, if I allow them to plant, use the bad seeds, then in the next crop, during the next crop, some of the birds and the insects will transport those bad seeds, which are the result of theirs planting those, using those bad seeds. They will come and drop those seeds, and in my next crop, unfortunately, I will have a mixed crop. There will be a good crop which is due to my good seeds, but the bad seeds which my neighbors have used accidentally through the peckings of the birds will drop the droppings of the birds, and that is how the seeds are transplanted in different farms. So if all the seeds surrounding my farm, the farms, if they use the good seeds, then the birds will drop only the good seeds, so I will not lose. So that was the reason the farmer gave, that it is for my own selfish interest. I have to keep the company, I have to give these seeds to others also near me. So I can't expect to be good if people around me are bad. So just as if you have bad seeds around you, you can't expect a good crop. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say that is the importance of satsang. But before that, nirjanvas, or going into solitude to study your own mind, plan your own life so that it becomes joyful, enduringly joyful, enduringly peaceful. So that is what M had, that is the advice M had received. Now it is time for M, after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, to explain these things to grief-stricken people who have visited Baranagar monastery. That's why perhaps he has given uh, this example, where a Rabindra, a young person who got infatuated with a woman of low character and perhaps wanted to marry her. So he was living with that lady, and that lady also perhaps uh, just thought that he is useless, and she drove her out, even taking away many things. And that poor Rabindra, as his name was, uh, though he was now and then going to Thakur and Sri Ramakrishna loved him deeply, but unfortunately, through some mistake, he fell into bad company, and he was under the impression, he didn't realize that the lady who uh, finally cheated on him does not love him. But that was a big shock for him, and he somehow ran. In the previous incident we saw, he did not even wait, because in those days people used to wear a dhoti. He came in a black bordered dhoti, which had the upper cloth missing, because when he was running away, this wife snatched his, not his wife, the lady snatched that upper piece, and she wanted to take away that also. So he somehow managed by the skin of his teeth to escape. And he has come in a very disturbed state of mind, and he has come to M. M was there, Suren Mitra and some other devotees were there in the monastery, and Naren was also there, Swami Vivekananda. This is a new monastery which they had just started when Holy Mother had prayed, seeing the Buddhist monasteries in Sarnath. She had prayed to Thakur that let my monastic disciples, or let the people who have renounced the world, stay in one place, so that the householders who are tormented with problems in their life due to certain mishaps and certain uh, problems which are common in the world, if they come, they'll get some kind of solace. So M was one of them. Though he missed Thakur, he used to come to the monastery and always have holy company with Naren and other brother disciples, and whatever little he could do, he used to help the monastery. It was a dilapidated house, as you all know, and it was very rare that only people who were really fed up of the world came there. Good people would prefer to socialize in other temples and big places of worship, because it is a more comfortable religion. People want a comfortable religion. They don't want their problems. They, even if they have their problems, they don't go. They think if they just go to temple, play, pay some money, and perform certain rituals, they will get rid of their problems. That is one way, uh, one way of somehow uh, consoling oneself that my problems will be solved by offering certain. This is part of organized religion, ritualistic religion, which has been practiced, and over which people have slowly losing faith now, because it's not any kind of business that you go to some temple place of worship, offer some rituals and get relief for your worldly problems. It's not going to happen that way. But people want a comfortable religion. They don't want to follow the essentials of spiritual life, which is Vairagya and Abhyasa, which we discussed in Patanjali's Yoga. Abhyasa and Vairagya understood in the proper spirit. Vairagya doesn't mean giving up all the desires of life, but regulating it, moderating it, and seeing that you enjoy legitimately whatever you can, but see very carefully that that enjoyment doesn't lead to a kind of trap where you yourself are getting enjoyed. And yesterday I mentioned this about Robert Ingersoll, who was a very atheistic person. He met Swami Vivekananda somewhere near New York, and he said, "Oh, I agree with many things you say, but I don't believe that the world is such a bad place. I know this world is there for me to enjoy, and I like to squeeze every drop of it." But Swamiji told him, "Are you sure that you are squeezing the orange? At the same time, you are squeezing the orange, you are losing a lot of drops. You are not able to enjoy every drop of the orange of the world that you think you are squeezing. When you are squeezing, there are some other people squeezing you and taking away those drops from you. So it's not that you always find the world such a gullible place, such a place where they will allow you to enjoy. You have to pay the price for that enjoyment. If you want to enjoy luxury, you have to pay a price. You have to perhaps work for several nights, day and nights, you have to slog so that you hope to enjoy the wealth which you gather towards the end of your life when you are perhaps in no position to enjoy it. Anyway, that is part of how the world runs. So, this is the lesson which M has learned from Sri Ramakrishna and is trying to instruct Rabindra. He says, "Don't worry, whatever has happened has happened." He has come like a madman and temporarily he has got vairagya. He says, "I just want to stay with you all. I am not going to go back. That lady has cheated me. She has even taken away the top of my dhoti, and he has come like a madman." So M was terribly worried. He said, "Don't worry, come with me." He takes him to the Ganges, asks him to take a bath, and when he has calmed down, he says, "Come, let us go and sit in the shrine." So, though he tries his best, he is not able to meditate because the torment that he was facing in the world, Rabindra, was so much that he was unable to, M was unable to console him. But by that time, that grief stricken Rabindra comes to the shrine and again is brought back to the shrine. He tried to escape, go somewhere here and there, and he was not knowing what to do. He had come like a rabid dog, not knowing what to do. His head was burning and he was complaining of so many things. But somehow he wanted some solace. He knew this is the only place where I can, uh, he could revive his old memories, his association with Sri Ramakrishna, and enjoy a moment's peace. But he was not finding it because his mind was too much disturbed. So Narendra very compassionately tries to sing a song, a Bengali song. The meaning of this song is beautiful. It's a song which the Vaishnavas, the disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, used to sing. So they are talking of Hari's love, the bliss that emanates from repeating the name of the Hari. So the aspiring soul who wants to uh, uh, find a direction in life, when he's confused, when people have cheated him, or when people have just he finds the world is a very miserable place to live in, and he has to be careful that he has to cast aside uh, avidya maya, not the vidya maya. So how to do that? So Naren is singing a song. He says, he is instructing Rabindra through this song: "Give up, O man, and cast aside any wrong advice." Wrong advice here means that avidya maya, which is due to ignorance. "You will be freed from your pain when you have known the Lord." So, the Lord, who is eternal, who is the most lovable person, who gives a stability and eternal joy and peace in your life, because of the very nature that he is eternal. Why the Lord gives us peace? Because he is of the nature of eternal consciousness, which never becomes lukewarm, when it never vanishes. It is something which is permanent. And when in this shifting sands of life, when things are coming and going at such a breakneck speed, we will find that things are coming to your life and going away as fast as they come. And that makes us sorrowful. We are chasing these empty dreams. So that is the song. He says, if you cast the wrong advice and listen to the right advice, you will be freed from your pain when you have known the Lord. Then, aspiring soul, I mean, a soul which is aspiring for permanent joy, peace, and bliss and peace. He's saying, aspiring soul, O sadhaka, imbibe the bliss from Hari's cup of love. So, Hari's cup of love, you have not tasted that. When Girish Ghosh first went, he was totally drunk. And when he saw Sri Krishna, he saw him drunk with Hari's cup of love. He was so intoxicated with the divine singing that he was acting as if he is intoxicated. And Girish thought he was in a very gross state of mind. So he said, what kind of drink Sri Krishna has taken? It seems to be more powerful than mine. Even the strongest of drinks does not make me so tipsy. So seeing that, Sri Krishna answers. He says, once you taste the name, the bliss of repeating the holy name and the Hari's cup of love, the joy of practicing the presence of the Lord who is eternal, then you will not go after these temporary pleasures. So, the second line of this song, Naren is singing, once childhood is spent in play and adulthood infatuated with woman. So, that is how Shankaracharya also describes that the whole of childhood through ignorance is spent in play. We don't try to develop our uh, the good side of our nature. It's just wasted in play, spent in play. Whether it is wasted, it's of course better than the adulthood, where one gets infatuated with woman. In old age, one falls prey to bodily ills. So naturally, the sequence continues as long as your human body lasts. He starts with uh, this childhood. One fourth of his time he spends in play. One fourth he is infatuated with women and woman. In old age, one frays to bodily ills and lies in bed from morning till dusk. How can this delusion, avidya, maya, be removed? And then Sri Krishna answers, Swamiji answers in that song, as the musk deer roams the forest, not knowing that the sweet scented musk that draws it ever onward rests in his own navel. So without the Guru's so without the Guru, one's searches will be in vain. So he's saying, don't follow the wrong advice, because the musk deer follows the scent and it thinks the scent or the wonderful joy and peace is outside. So it runs after without knowing where it is running. It does not know the direction or where to run. It simply thinks the smell is outside, whereas the smell is coming from its own navel. So if it had stayed in one place, as Sri Ramakrishna advised, it could have enjoyed the smell of the musk deer without any effort. But avidya maya, the sweet scented musk that draws it ever onward, it is always drawing it, running after temporary things, and it grabs one thing, thinks that is the source of the smell, and finds it is not that smell. It just discards it. So he goes on and on and on searching for that wonderful smell, which is in fact in its own navel. So all it has to do is sit quietly in one place and enjoy the fragrance. So the right person to give proper guidance is the Guru. So without Guru, one's searches will be in vain. Like the deer search for that. So the Guru will tell you the whole joy, the whole bliss, or the peace which you are trying to seek in these temporary things. They are all there within you. You just have to look at the right place with the right method. And these were the four methods. So now the brothers of the mutt have just come to Kali Tapasvi's room, that is Swami Abhedananda, and there are different monks now, where Shashi Maharaj, or Swami Ramakrishna as he was named later on, is doing the puja of Thakur's relics, thinking that Thakur is still alive. You see, this conversation took place a few months after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, where the direct disciples, including M, who has meditated and recorded these conversations, still wants to feel the blissful presence of Thakur, which he firmly believes he will get in this Baranagar monastery. So he sees and he appreciates the wonderful devotion with which Swami Ramakrishna is serving as if Thakur is alive. He was the one who used to go for begging and gather food in the name of Thakur, offer it to Thakur, prepare nice food items, nice in the sense very simple, but that which would enable the other monks to survive. So rice balls with a little ghee, if he managed to get, used to prepare them, and that was the simple food which he used to offer as prasad to all the inmates, and sometimes even the householders who came, they also got a share of their prasad. So Sri Ramakrishna, next day M is coming on 10th May, the day of the Divine Mother. Narendra and other brothers are going to offer a special puja to the Mother of the Universe. So that is a special day. A triangular yantra. Yantra is used in Tantra. It's a copper plate with a triangular shape, and it has been drawn in front of Thakur shrine. So when mother is worshipped, they are worshipped in the sacred yantra, a triangular yantra which is symbolic of the divine mother. So they will be worshipping that, and uh, they will be performing a homa, that is havan, and it will be followed by some token animal sacrifice. According to Tantra, both homa and sacrifice have to be performed. So normally they offer goats and other things, but here they will offer some vegetable thinking, or maybe that's the tradition in the mission. You offer uh, some kind of pumpkin or something. They perform that ritual thinking that it is that we are offering an animal, because that animal sacrifice has come from time immemorial, especially in the tantras. So Naren reads from the Gita. Mani or M goes for a dip in the Ganges. Rabindra paces the roof all alone. Now Rabindra is not taking part. He is still disturbed by the fact that he has been thrown out of the house of that woman whom he was thinking to live with and to marry. So he is upset. He is pacing the roof all alone. He somehow wants silence. He is not even interested in this puja or this worship. Though Narendra has tried to convince him and tell him that don't bother, these are the transient phases of life. Come back to your senses and worship Lord Hari so that you can regain your peace, joy, and bliss. Uh, which which is within yourself. You don't have to search outside, but unfortunately that advice has not been taken seriously, and he is trying to pace up and down, thinking that if he goes to the terrace and lives alone he will get peace. He doesn't realize that one only vairagya, now he has got a temporary vairagya, he has given up his home and everything and come here disgusted with the treatment which his uh, partner had with him, the partner with whom he was trying to live and thinking of marrying her. But anyway, that disgust is expressed as the desire to avoid all company. So he's gone on the terrace and he just wants to be alone. So he hears Narendra chanting melodiously below. So the puja is going on there, and Rabindra is now hearing the wonderful songs which Naren is singing. That is the Nirvana Ashtakam. uh, uh, Om, I am Manobuddhya Ahankara Chittani Naham, Nacha Grana Netre, Nacha Panchavayu. That's a beautiful song where the six verses uh, of Nirvana are chanted it's a monistic song, it's a Advaitic song where he says Shankaracharya is supposed to be the author of that Nirvana, the six verses on Nirvana. Om, I am neither the mind, the intellect, the ego, nor the mind stuff. Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta. All these things I am not. I am the pure Shiva. I am the pure knowledge and bliss. Chidananda. Chit means pure consciousness. Ananda means bliss. I am the pure Shiva. Just as the deer smells the wonderful musk within itself in the navel, so also the uh, the singer here, I mean Naren in this case, is reciting the wonderful hymn of Nirvana, which Shankaracharya composed, saying that I am neither the mind, the intellect, nor the ego, nor the mind stuff. I am neither the mind, the reactive mind, nor am I the buddhi, because buddhi is useful at lower levels. But after that, you have to even give up the buddhi and the ego, which is so difficult to give up. So the avidya maya has to be also given up definitely. That will lead you to bondage. But the vidya maya also ultimately has to be given at a higher stage, nor the mind stuff. Because as long as the reactive mind and all these different stages of the mind are there, they have a tendency to drag us down to the uh, temporary, and the misery and suffering is the result or the consequence of that. So I am neither the ear. So this is a song which is sung to lift the mind on a plane which will temporarily soothe us, make us forget the body for some time. The body which is causing so much of suffering, the ego that is causing so much of suffering, the mind that is always wavering and getting confused and getting dragged down and getting attached to so many things which make us bound to the world. So that to get that feeling, to get a feeling glimpse of freedom, these songs were composed and sung. Nor am I the ears, the tongue, the nostrils, and the eyes. I am neither the sky nor the earth nor fire. I am Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am neither life breath, I am not the prana, nor the five vital forces, nor the seven metals, Panch Sapta Dhatu. I am not the solid things which you see, I am not the five sheets. I am neither the Annamay Kosha, the Pranamay Kosha, Manomay Kosha. I am beyond that. If you want to experience that joy, bliss, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, that real nature of Shiva which is within us, then we have to give up the gross things which are surrounding us. So these are the gross things which we have to negate. This is the path of Jnana or the path of Advaita, where you believe that you are the pure spirit and you would like to uh, remain as the pure spirit. So you have to progressively negate all these things, the eyes, the ears, the tongue, and just feel for a moment that you are the pure consciousness within, which is full of bliss. You don't have to create bliss, you don't have to search for that bliss. That musk smell is already there. You have to just sit quietly, allow the mind to become calm, and enjoy that. I have neither attachment, nor enmity, nor greed, nor infatuation. I am not having all these things. I have neither vanity or envy. I don't bother what happens. Just don't have that vanity or envy. I am not jealous of anybody. Nor do I have any concern with righteousness, wealth, desire, kama, dharma, artha, kama, and definitely moksha, which I am aspiring to attain. I know nothing of virtue or vice, nothing of happiness and sorrow. I want to renounce all this and become one with that Shiva, Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. So, next, that song still continues. I know neither the mantra nor the place of pilgrimage nor Veda nor ritual, because in Advaita there is no need. But when we follow the path of Dvaita, we have to pass through all these stages. We simply cannot say the body does not exist. People like Raman Maharshi and all who just meditated on the self knew that it is a very difficult thing, because these things cannot be expressed through words. One has to feel it, and one has to really feel the absence of the body, which is not possible. So that is why we use a slightly easier and lower method, that is of bhakti, and gradually raise our consciousness to that level. Rabindra now is returning after his bath. He was all the while moving like a mad person. He was so much upset with the shock he received that he came, and after his bath, he has taken a dip to cool himself. His mind was terribly heated out of anger and out of the treatment that he got from his would be wife, and he comes here in a wet cloth. Narendra is telling Mani, he has just taken his bath. It's the right time to initiate him into sannyas. They all laugh. Naren was just making a light comment that now he has that vairagya. So is it proper to initiate him? But that was out. Naren surely knew that he is not going to stay in the monastery. Again, something will drag him, and the Maya will drag him. So they just ask. You see, now he is full of vairagya. Such occasions are very rare. People don't learn lessons. So Prasanna asked Rabindra to change. Says, you have come in a wet dhoti. I'll give you a gerua if you like. You stay here permanently. Since you have expressed a desire that you don't want to go back to the world. Are you really serious? So Prasanna was one of them who was staying there. So they're just asking him. So uh, Narendra then asks Mani, oh, now he's going to wear that gerua. So they feel, I mean, they're just discussing whether the gerua should be given to him. Then Mani says, but the gerua is a sign of renunciation of lust and greed. Should we give it to him? But anyway, he grabs it. Because he has got that vairagya, he's putting on that ochre cloth, and perhaps he takes a vow that he is not going to go back home. And he goes into Kali Tapasvi, that is Swami Abhedananda's room, and sit there alone. He doesn't want to be in anybody's company. So he goes there and meditates there. So that's the end of uh, the conversation that took place in Baranagar monasteries. So I think this conversation took place a few months after the passing away of Thakur. So Sri Ramakrishna thought to include this in the appendix 1. And there is another appendix which is a letter written from Ashwini Kumar, who wrote the famous Bhakti Yoga based on Thakur's teachings. We have Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, but there is another beautiful book on Bhakti written by Ashwini Kumar, who was a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. So he has come, and the second appendix describes. First appendix was Rabindra's renunciation, the so-called renunciation. He, of course, he goes back to the world. He gets a temporary vairagya when he finds his dreams dashed to his hopes dashed to the ground. So he has come with a temporary vairagya. That is one aspect of life which M tries to show. But here there is another devotee uh, who has come. But this took place long ago. So M has introduced this or included this in the gospel as a reminiscence, as something which he had heard. It is not, he has not seen this incident, but it is based on a letter written by Ashwini Kumar to M. Perhaps M wanted to know some things about Thakur's life before he came in contact with Thakur. So Ashwini Kumar had met him much before M had met him, the chronicler of the gospel. So he is asking him to write a description of what he felt and what he saw in Thakur. So that letter he has published as an appendix. So we will just read it, a few lines, and then we will discuss it next time. So, beloved brother M, I received the fourth part of Sri Sri Kathamrut sent by you on the day of Kuzagar Purnima and finished reading it today, the second day of the lunar month. Blessed you are. You have showered nectar on the whole country. So Ashwini Kumar is thanking M for reproducing very honestly and very perfectly the Kathamruta. Amruta means nectar. So he says, your Kathamruta is a nectar of Thakur's words which has been showered on the entire country. It was in Bengali, but it was translated in several languages. Some time ago, you wanted me to tell you the about that conversations I had with Thakur. I shall try to tell you about them, but I am not lucky as you are, as M, to be able to write down the day, the date, the position of the planets of my visits with him, the account of all the words which came from his holy lips. I shall write only what I remember. It is possible that I mistake the date of one conversation with the other. So, uh, these things he is trying to explain, or trying to Ashwini Kumar is trying to remember certain conversations which he had with Thakur, and he says, I might not be very accurate with the date, but I'm sure about the content. So, based on its authenticity, M has reproduced this whole letter. So, it is very interesting to know what Sri Ramakrishna spoke to some devotees, a great devotee who was full of bhakti, and he in fact wrote a book. Bhakti is a famous professor of also Ashwini Kumar. So he Ashwini Kumar Datta. So his reminiscences are very important, and they form part two of the appendix to the first volume of Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We have come to the end of the Gospel now. We will start with the second volume in the next class and finish reading from this small portion, this letter, which describes the wonderful meeting he had with Sri Ramakrishna and the messages and the lessons he learnt from him. So, if there are some questions, I will just try to answer. Yes, somebody has asked if you could download this song sung by Naren. The last song, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivom, it is there on the internet. I will post it on the WhatsApp web. It's a beautiful song. Many people have sung it in different tunes. So we have many of this last hymn, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. It has been sung by some of our monks also. So I will post it for the benefit of all, the audio or the YouTube video of that song very soon. I will just do it after the class. Now Ravi is asking a question. In your talk last Sunday, you touched on overpopulation and its problematic impact on the world and its resources. However, several religions promote having many children. Isn't it true? That is true. There are some religions who do not believe growth of population is a problem, but one has to take a very practical view. All of us know the resources. Even Malthus, who wrote his famous book, he says when the world population grows, there will be more and more people fighting for lesser and lesser resources. It's very common sense that the resources are not going to be endless. Right now, you see the crude oil prices are going up now slowly, and a day may come then we may need some other alternative fuel. The crude oil resources will last maybe maximum 50 years or 100 years. We do not know. So the resources with which human being is surviving today are not going to increase unless something drastic is discovered. But still, the area covered by the planet, the area that can be used for growing crops, these are going to be limited. And then the needs of men are increasing. People want more and more things, more and more consumables, the desires are increasing. So, in a very practical way, it doesn't really depend on whether any religion or faith believes in overpopulation. No sensible person will say that overpopulation is a blessing in disguise, that the more the number of people, who will say that? A scientific attitude very clearly shows that, and every country admits all the wonderful gains they have, all the wonderful progress that humanity is made is negated by this one problem, is overpopulation. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna, when some householder asked Sri Ramakrishna that what will happen if people decide not to marry, he said, who asked you not to marry? You go and marry. I'm not telling you, but the world will not come to a stop if some people don't marry. It was in that context I said that people think that unless the process of creation, there are a lot of create things which have been created by Prakriti. We don't think, we should not think that only human beings have a right to create. Do we not kill so many animals, so many trees, so many plants which are getting created? And then when the other creations decide that human beings are multiplying too much, and then pandemics come and then they start killing human beings, we get upset. But we don't think that we are making so many species. That's why we have this Greenpeace and all the animal rights movements. We go on mercilessly killing. We don't believe, because then the animals also will say that we also have a right to create. Every pig will say that I have a right to create 100 pigs. But unfortunately, they are killed for, that is how Prakriti works. She cannot bear the burden of indefinite number of creations. So she has created destruction. And we don't understand the working of Prakriti. If we are wise, we will come to the conclusion that wherever there is creation, there should be destruction. So there is no peace or no joy in the gross. We have to transcend the gross, become one with the Purusha. That is what all religion is saying. So these things, that who promotes choosing having many children or who does not promote, that is immaterial. If one is keen, let them have, and let them have the suffering. You can't tell the fish that you should not produce 1 million of eggs. It produces millions of eggs. Hardly few of them survive. So it is its duty to do that. So also every species on the planet is multiplying. But we have to remember that out of this process of reproduction, many are killed. Some are killed for food, some are killed because of the competition and the survival of the fittest. Charles Darwin himself said, it is the survival of the fittest. If you are going to have a share of my food, the lions thinks that 5 lions, if they share one deer as which is their prey, then they will fight amongst each other. So it is the fittest which will survive. So the deer will be killed by the tiger, the lion, and maybe the deer will kill something else. So this whole process of creation, preservation, and destruction is going on. So one should not think that creation is the only goal God has given us to do. There are to balance the process of excess creation, there is either preservation and destruction also in place. So the whole of Prakriti should be understood from that point of view. So now people may have difference of opinion, uh, whether it is natural to have more and more children, but that depends on one's own choice, how much burden he wants to create on the world or how much burden he wants to take away from the world. So it is in that context I told. And the particular context in which I told was that somebody from the medical fraternity was asking this monk who was running an orphanage, who was running an orphanage where he was looking after children produced by other parents who perhaps died or were not able to support. So as a result, they were become orphans and they had nobody to look after them, and they were being supported in the school. And this medical student in a youth convention had the courage or the temerity to ask this monk that you are wasting your life by not marrying, and you could have, you are a qualified person, you could have done so much for the country, and all sorts of philosophy he was trying to explain. It is in that context that a monk told that student. Now take for example, he told it in a very indirect way, but it was so effective that all the students who were there, who thought it was, they had proved a point by saying that what, if you enter this world and do something for the world, it's much better than just staying alone. So staying single, and especially it was a criticism of the monastic life. Then the Swami there, I just want to repeat this for the benefit of those who have not heard this. He gave a very logical argument. He said, you think what you, and there was a lot of applause when that young man said that, supported. He said, to live in the world is the goal of life. God has created mm, this world so that, but who says God has created this world with one particular purpose in life? The monks have their place. People who are single, people like Abdul Kalam who never married, but they contributed. Did they not contribute to the country? They in fact contributed more. So the monk who was asked this question by this arrogant doctor, would be doctor, he had not even become a doctor. He asked him, don't you think that if you had taken to professional life, you would have served the country better? Then he said, okay, I don't serve the country, I'm just looking after a small orphanage here. Of course, I'm looking after an orphanage, but I'm staying in this monastery. Even if I did not do anything, he wanted to show him, even if I just stayed and took my meal and just survived on by begging, even that is a noble life. How he showed it? He told him, take your grandfather who is my age now. He asked him how many children he has got. He said, being a very in those days people used to have a lot of children, so perhaps he had 8 or 9 children or maybe 10. So he said those 10 children, they are your parents. So now if you come to the third generation, by the time your grandfather is my age, he has already created a tree chain of people, which according to your calculation is more than 70 or 80. So who is actually benefiting when India is struggling against population? If one person had perhaps not married out of his own choice, not that marriage is something bad, but if he had not married, what harm he would have done? In fact, he would have at least saved 70 people for looking for jobs in a highly competitive, overpopulated India where there is so much of poverty. So he said, your argument is fallacious. And then he said, this brahmachari who was not married, he has not produced any children of his own because he has not married. But at the same time, you see, he's contributing so much, and you don't see that contribution. He's looking after the children of somebody who did not have the resources to bring up their own children. So it is in that context. It was not from a religious point of view. So I think Ravi has got the answer. It is not sanctioned by any religion. That's why Thakur said those who are want to marry, they are free to marry, and but the practical point of view, no, even a scientific person will agree with this argument. That's why that day the whole gathering, especially the young doctors who were very keen to make fun of the monastic life, they got back a very nice and wonderful answer. And perhaps if they have gone away wiser after that youth convention, and some of them would have been inspired to at least not contribute to the population of the world, I think that would have sent a very strong and beautiful message, which Sri Ramakrishna gives in the gospel. He says, why are you encouraging these young people to become monks? If everybody decides not to marry, then what will happen to God's creation? Then Thakur laughs and said, don't worry about God's creation. He has his own way. You don't have to bother your head about that. So that is the answer of a true spiritual person. Religion has different opinions, so we need not discuss about that. Okay. Yes, there is a one more question. Can the people divorced in modern day learn from Thakur's teachings? Yes, definitely. There are many things which can be, uh, I mean, people have so many vocations, so many professions, so many ways of living. You see, there is such a wonderful variety in creation that we think the Prakriti has only one way of influencing people. But Prakriti influences somebody. There is a beautiful song that both Vidya Maya and Avidya Maya are working. So it 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 uh, it is Prakriti's play. How much of Avidya Maya and how much of Vidya Maya is necessary to maintain a harmony and balance? When somebody said that the world is becoming bad, it's a wrong statement, because the sum total of good and bad, the evil people and the good people, will always have to be maintained. Otherwise, there will be total destruction, nothing will remain. At least the gross will go. But the subtle vibrations will still be there. We think when we see some evil in the gross, we think that is the whole thing. But there are so many good people at the same time. So there are varieties of people. People who willingly decide that they should embrace a worldly life. It may not be totally out of ignorance, or it may be out of ignorance. There are some people who are forced to live the worldly life, as maybe the case of divorce or maybe something else, and they learn their lesson that way. There may be some other people who voluntarily choose not to marry, and there may be people who want to remain monks. There are so many categories of people. There are people like Abdul Kalam, for example, who find it's not always necessary that one has to become a monastic to remain single. There are people who are wedded to certain higher ideals. They want to achieve something, and they feel that if they waste their energy in so many other preoccupations which are very natural to a worldly life, then they think their ambition, their aim. For example, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he preferred to remain a bachelor his entire life. There were other good people uh, who have followed this example, because they found that the goal they aspired for, it may not be a spiritual goal, it may be a goal to become a top scientist, to contribute something to the world. They find that it is a kind of distraction, and it is a kind of uh, their capacity will be limited if they have to fight on so many fronts. So Sri Ramakrishna used to give that wonderful example. He used to say that once one is enmeshed in the, one has created problems by more and more attachments and more contacts, then what happens is his energy is diverted. He can spare only a little energy for the principal goal of his life, if he has any. If he has no principal goal other than just leading a uh, hopefully peaceful life, which he may or may not lead, then he will say that let us follow the crowd and just do. But there will always be a creative minority in every society. It's not that it's a Indian idea. Even one does not have to be a monastic, but there will be a large number of people who are wedded, who are wedded to their ideals, who are wedded to certain concepts or certain great achievements which they want to do, and they find anything that comes in the way to be an hindrance. So these are the different places. So Sri Krishna had advice for everybody, even for people who are in bondage. So definitely he had advice for all the categories. There were people who who became widowed, for example, at a very young age. There was Gopalar Ma, who was widowed. Yogin, there were so many cases of devotees who came to Thakur who had either lost their husband or lost their wife, either due to death or due to divorce. So there were definitely, everybody found a wonderful way of practicing the essential teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. And the main thing was how free you can become under the circumstances you are, whether you are forcibly free or somebody has made you free, comparatively free. How you use your freedom and how you use the spare time you get, if at all you have freedom, that Sri Krishna is concerned about. That he is more concerned about people who have that freedom to practice spirituality, but don't use it. That is the idea. In the whole entire gospel, he says, he's pleading, why don't you go into solitude now and then? If you can get more solitude, go into more solitude. If you can live a life of total solitude, that is fine. But if you can't, at least have some kind of satsang which keeps your discrimination between temporary and permanent alive. So Thakur's message is meant principally, the more benefit one can get from Sri Ramakrishna's life and message if one has one has discriminated between the eternal and the temporary. That is one of the aspects of sadhana which he prescribed. And one has a natural love for solitude, because that is when you can practice this kind of viveka. And then you have a natural love for something higher, the love of God, the eternal. See, without that love of God, it is impossible to practice Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, because his teachings begin with love of God, because God is the eternal. All the prophets, including Jesus, when he said God and mammon cannot go together. So first of all, we assume that Sri Ramakrishna's followers, whoever it is, whatever be the reason they have come to Thakur, they may have come with some disappointment, they would have come with some expectation, they would have come with certain attitudes. Whatever attitude they come with, everybody has got something to learn from Sri Ramakrishna. Yeah. So there's one more question. Okay, somebody is asking, Swamiji, would you please give us again the four aspects or sadhana, the deeds we need to do? I remember two, japa and satsang. What are the other two? Okay, there are five actually. There are four, but I mentioned four. There is a fifth one also. So I'll just repeat. First is taking the name of the Lord, japa and prayer and namasankirtan and all. Second is that is possible if you have satsang, somebody inspires you to do. So satsang is the second, which you have mentioned. Third is solitude, nirjan vas. Fourth, which is solitude where you get a chance. And the fourth is nitya vastu viveka. Nitya means always trying to evaluate everything that you do, think, or occupy yourself with. Anything that you occupy yourself with, just inquire whether that is going to give you a permanent happiness, joy, or is it just giving you a temporary kick, which will again put you or maybe involve you or engage you in more and more sorrow. So you have to be very careful. You can learn that this particular viveka from our own experience, if we have experienced, or from others' experience. When we see other people suffering, then we are a bit cautious. Should we put our finger into the fire? A person who has not been burnt doesn't mean that you have to always go and put your finger into the fire. If you have seen somebody has put his finger into the fire, you can learn from drishta anushravika. The definition of vairagya was given as drishta means that which you have yourself experienced. Anushravika means that which you have heard or seen. So you can learn from others' experiences also. So that discrimination between eternal and the temporary, not to go after the temporary, but as far as possible, go after the eternal, is the fourth thing. And the fifth thing, which Sri Ramakrishna mentioned yesterday, was that one has to live, if at all one has to live in this world, he can live like a boat which is on water, not allow the water to come in. How to do that? That he says that you should live in the world like a maid servant lives in or works in the house of her master. She does all the work of that home. She also loves the children of that home, but knowing fully well, knowing in the heart of her hearts that these children, these objects, these all the things that she is doing in somebody's house is not her own. Her child is at her own home. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna says. That is the fifth thing one ought to do. After doing the first four things, whatever be the vocation, whatever be the profession, whether you are single, forcibly single or willingly single, forcibly married or willingly married, all the categories have something or the other relative to their particular vocation to learn from Thakur. Thakur always says that you travel from lower truth to higher truth. He does not condemn anybody, but he says you have to acknowledge there is a lower truth for people who are bound to this world. There is a way out of bondage. Like the four uh, fishes were there. One fish, once it is caught, it wants to remain caught. The second type of fish, Nitya Baddha, completely bound fish. It does not even try to come out of the net. The second one tries to come out of the net but does not succeed. It tries very hard. It knows now I am going to be caught. Whereas the third category manages to jump out of the net. And finally, the fourth category, which says, I will never be bound by Maya. So that never catch comes and gets caught. It swims so low or so high that it avoids the net altogether. So Thakur used to compare these are the four varieties. Baddha Jiva, totally bound, who do not even bother to come out of the net. Then partially Baddha, who are sadhakas, who are trying very hard, and some of them managed to jump out of the net, and some who never got caught in the net in the first place. That is people like Naren, Nitya Mukta. They are Nitya Mukta, they are never bound. So all the different categories you can find in nature, and everybody can benefit from Thakur's message. We will discuss about this in the next class. Om Shanti.